You are listening to Level Up Gaming Podcast, episode 128, a look into One D&D. In today's episode, we have a look into the new playtest material for One D&D. We discuss class, race, and feat changes that are part of the One D&D. We also discuss some rule changes and have an interesting discussion on one of the more controversial changes. If you'd like to participate in the discussion or leave us feedback, you can contact us at levelupyourgamingpodcast@gmail.com or find us on Facebook at facebook.com/levelupyourgaming. If you like the content and want to hear more of the show, subscribing will ensure you don't miss an episode. New episodes come out almost every Wednesday. Also, please review, tell a friend about the podcast, or share with your gaming group. Now sit back and enjoy the episode.
Bow, 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 bow. Level Up Your Gaming Podcast.
Welcome into the Level Up Your Gaming Podcast. My name is Aaron, and joining me virtually, I've got Josh. How you doing today, Josh?
Good.
Doing real good. I'm glad to have you here today. We were talking about doing these some recordings here. Obviously, I'm trying to build up a backlog because of the life event that I have coming up. So I need to get some material to be able to release over the next coming months. And this is going to help out with that. So that was the only announcement for the podcast itself. But one of the things that we had talked about was the playtest material for the One D&D character origins just came out, and you saw it, and I know that you play D&D with your group, and I'm sure this is very interesting to you, and probably interesting to a lot of our listeners, because I think that's kind of the main medium that most people play tabletop is D&D. So I'll let you take it away. What are your thoughts on some of it?
Well, I really liked the document itself in that it is an amuse-bouche for what D&D is going to be. It really is sort of like an interesting way to put this together. I started playing D&D back in 3rd ed, did a lot of 3.5, played 4, I think, for like one session, and everybody hated it, and really got back into it with 5e. And one of the things that we've seen is that there's been changes over the years where they're trying to streamline certain parts of it. I mean, ignoring, of course, 4, but with this new version, the most recent new version, I know they're saying this is going to be the last version, but there'll be a new version in like 10 years or something when new people take over. But some of the things that they put in there make sense in the way that you're not trying to make everybody plays the same game or everybody plays the same characters, because if you want this type of character, you have to play it this specific way. That whole metagaming, or playing the meta,
specializing, that sort of thing, min-maxing.
Yeah. And while I can see that there might be some of that still in there, they let you do it in a way that makes sense and still lets you put flavor on it. Okay. And I think that's what's cool. It doesn't have a lot in terms of DM information, but there's a couple of things that I saw in there that really spoke to topics that you've covered before. And I think that that's really interesting that, they're sort of leaning into that. The better ways to do things, they're not straight up saying it, but the subtext is there, and I think we can cover those as we get to them.
Yeah, definitely. We sort of hit on them before we got started here, but I know what you're going to say. I saw a little short on it from who's the blue-haired girl that does some YouTube
Ginny D.
Yeah, Ginny D. She had a little short on this there, and I was like, okay, yeah, I hear you. I watched it. And so I mean, I am interested to hear like the evolution of it. You're right, they're eventually going to come up with a new D&D at some point. It's too profitable to not start releasing a bunch of new books under a new pseudo system. And there's nothing. The more I've thought about some of this, there's nothing terribly wrong in building characters in the most efficient way. Yeah, it's one of the things that we've kind of talked about within the podcast here. Maybe in the World of Darkness setting that is not, you have some more flexibility if you're not all built the same way. But in the D&D setting, as I had played it, especially in the 5th ed, the game that I joined up with was supposed to be about a bunch of like kind of odd characters and weird combinations of things. And the moment that we got past like 4 or 5 levels, my character, which was not min-max the right way, was just terrible. So yeah, I kind of say if the system kind of calls for it, and if you're working through tactical stuff, which D&D is a heavy tactical piece to it, go ahead and min-max. That doesn't hurt my feelings if the system kind of calls for it.
Yeah. Well, and I enjoy playing interesting characters or having interesting characters in my game. And when they're not min-maxed, they can have different options available to them. And that is one of the things that D&D has always done really well, is that you don't necessarily, you level up and you become more powerful and you like can put out more damage per round. But there's a lot of broad rather than tall advancement of character. You get more options, and you can get that with special items or special skills and whatnot. And I think some of the things that they put into this are really focused more around the giving a wider array of options rather than just straight up power.
I like options.
Options are super useful because they lead to good storytelling. You get that the ability to tackle a problem from different angles. And when your characters can do that, you can give them more interesting puzzles, because they're not just like, I hit the door as hard as I can until it opens,
Yes.
So I think we should start top down on this document.
Okay.
Because that's how we read, and that just works well for me.
Josh took some very good notes. I got to see them. So
I was in a couple of meetings, and I just thought I might as well use my time the most efficiently. The document starts out, the top of it is, let me scroll to the top just so I can take a look here, is some background on like what they're doing and blah, 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 blah. And we can skip over that. The big important thing that it starts with is character races. And a couple of things I wanted to point out here. Now, this document doesn't have them, and I don't think they're supposed to, is that they've pretty much removed all sub-races from this design. Remember, in 5e, if you had like an elf, then you had 3 different types of sub-elves.
There's like the hill elf, the mountain elf, stuff like that.
Those are dwarves, but yes,
okay.
Exactly.
See, that's how much I play.
And the drow. Yeah, no, and that's the thing. They were you had to pick a type of, this character, that character, and then you got specific abilities based on that. Some of that is still here because they kept, they don't call them sub races. They call them, what do they call them? Lineages. So you're all the same, except, your ancestors might have been different. I think it's nice because they added in other things. Everybody's got some of the basic abilities are all the same, and it's a little bit more level playing field. So you're not always picking this type of dwarf or that type of gnome because that's the best one. You get a little bit more flavor. The other thing they did with all these races was they removed stats from them. Okay. So like in the previous edition, you pick up, if you want to be a barbarian, your best choice is to play an orc because they've got the strength and the constitution bonuses.
Yes, I know what you're talking about. I remember I thought they got rid of that with Tasha's Cauldron of Everything.
They did, but they're bringing this into the core story here.
Okay.
And Tasha's, it was still an option. And so if you're playing D&D 5e and your GM doesn't have that book or doesn't want to play it that way, it now becomes sort of one of those, difficult to run things. Or like if you are playing on Roll20 or like some other virtual tabletop, they have to have the book in order for you to use that. This is sort of built into the base. They actually move those into another section, which I think is even more fun. And then the last part that's like sort of overall, and I think this is just the biggest duh move they could have done. Everybody moves at the same speed now. There's no characters that are moving, 5 feet slower per round.
So you mean that your monk that can just run across the world in one turn and back can't do that anymore?
No, they absolutely can't. But we don't have class information yet, so we don't know.
Okay.
What I'm saying is that, your whole party is just walking along, and nope, you have to stop every so often for the dwarves and the gnomes and the halflings to catch up because they're just inherently moving slow.
By default, all people move at the same speed. Got it.
Which is just like, yes, don't make things difficult.
I mean, so unless you're in a dungeon, I always kind of felt like anything that wasn't dungeon movement was a little hand wavy. Or if you're not in combat, it's a little hand wavy, which is move it however you want to move. Which makes sense. In combat, it's a little bit different, but in terms of like travel and other things like that, I've never seen that really come into play. So it makes sense just to say, just get rid of it. It doesn't.
Just get rid of it. If you are in combat, 30 feet per round, that's 30 feet in 6 seconds. That's not super fast. That's, I think that's like a brisk walking pace.
But that's not just moving, Josh. You can move, you can attack, you can scratch your butt, and you can heal your friend.
Yeah, and you have time to do that. And even if you got stumpy little legs, you can probably still do that.
Yeah.
It's fine. I just thought it was one of those, like, it makes it easier to plan an encounter or plan a dungeon if you don't have to be like, well,
who's my slowest guy, and will my other people outclass him and be engaging in targets? And
Or, like, oh, the healer happens to be slow, so he'll never catch up. I gotta like hold back on my big attacks until they get within range. No, everybody has the same options for movement.
That's good.
Hold on a second.
You have a little dog barking at you?
Yeah. Get out of the room. Hold on a second.
Josh is back from taking care of the dog.
Thank you. Yeah, so those are the main things like that are overall in the races. Each one of the races, it's got some changes, but they're like minor. Some of them are really good. Some of them are really weird or just wrong. And they do have a new race they're adding in.
Okay. So what's the new race?
They're called Ardlings. They're like tieflings, but instead of being infernal, they're the other thing.
Okay. So instead of being infernal, they're kind of more like angelic.
Yeah, no, because, okay, so they used to have the Aasimar, which were like the angel people.
Okay.
But these are not those. They're very similar. Aasimar aren't even in here. So I don't know what that is. But Aasimar weren't part of the core book before, so...
So they're just meant to be the antithesis of what the tiefling is.
Yeah.
Okay.
They get animal faces.
Okay.
They get a flying dash, which is crazy nice. Like, you can use a bonus action to dash, but you also it's a flying dash. You can fly up to your movement speed in a round.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sure nobody's gonna use that whatsoever.
Oh, absolutely. And that's the only thing I was thinking about from like how to set up an encounter or just like a puzzle. You got to break into the mayor's office to steal some documents. Well, now the broken window has to be 35 feet off the ground.
Listen, they've been having a lot of artists break in right now. We had to make these 35 feet off the ground. Everything in the world started to go with odd, it's in the standard 8-foot ceilings. Now everything's 12-foot ceilings to make sure that the windows are 35 feet off the ground.
It's sure it's a little bit more expensive, but all the houses are really nice now. So I think it's it's playtest, so that could get nerfed, but I kind of like it.
Again, things are going to sneak through. It doesn't matter what you do. This is the truth. There is no balancing in any game. There are things that are always really good, and people are going to figure out what those things are. Okay? So if this is one of them, guess what? It's a really good thing, and it's going to be in your game. And you as a GM are going to have to work around how that works. So 35-foot, windows? Maybe.
Or make it 30 feet and make it so they've got to go and do that. And maybe, flapping your wings, now you got to make a stealth check at disadvantage because you're doing it in midair in the middle of a yard. Come on, people.
There is no cover for that dot in the sky.
Your giant wings and flapping noises attract the guards. Yeah. So there's ways you can work around it.
Make that advantage a disadvantage.
Yeah. Just run through some of these other races real quick because some of the good stuff is down below.
Okay.
Start with humans. Great as usual. They've got a couple of things that they put in there. It looks like they took the variant human, which was if you're playing human in 5e, you're taking variant because
it was the better human.
Yeah. They added inspiration so you get inspiration on a long rest. They changed inspiration in this a little bit too. So I think it's cool. You wake up in the beginning of the day and you always have at least one roll of advantage just because, why not? And that's nice and plain. You still get the extra feet. You still get an extra skill or two. So you're just sort of like a jack of all trades. Really nice. Ardlings we already covered. Dragonborn. It's got the same dark vision, and they still have the same sub legacies where they're all different colors or whatnot. But what they did, and this just makes me happy, is that they are all the same 15-foot cone weapon. So you're not like some of them were lines and some of them were cones. They're all the same. It's just all the same.
Simplify it. It's good.
Yeah. I have seen some complaints from people online because one of the recent books that Wizards put out was Fizban's Draconic Archive or something like that. And they gave an option to, instead of using it as a breath weapon, you could release it as part of an attack.
Okay.
So which just seems whatever. It could be a thing. They could add it as a feat, like a racial feat.
Sure.
Give people the option, but this is a taste. Dwarves is the next one on there. They keep almost everything the same. They took out, there was mountain dwarves, I think it was, had the ability, they get better armor to start with. They can take light or medium armor, and they just got rid of that because I'm looking at the classes, and the only people that can't use light or medium armor are wizards, sorcerers, warlocks, some of those classes that it's fine. There's other ways to get there, especially with the feats and stuff that they add in. So instead, they gave everybody the toughness, which gives you extra hit points per level. And so all dwarves just get the extra hit points. Just nice. But they added, they had a thing called stone cunning before, which was you could tell the history of stonework, which I don't think has shown up more than once ever in one of my games. It's just an extremely difficult thing to sort of you put stone motifs around everywhere and wait for people to
Unless you're going to play heavy into a bunch of lore, I mean, that's probably something that's really abstract and obscure. I think a lot of the traits that all the different races had in the core book
Mm.
were so one-off that most people, I honestly just don't think that you would care to think about them most of the time. And as a storyteller, you probably ignore, 70% of them anyways, because they're just like, they're so obscure. That would be one of them, which is like, am I really going to do this?
No. And so the thought was always make something functional, make something that the players can use in game, because when you give them options to do something with it, it gives them more options and you make better stories. So what they did on this one, they changed it from being able to tell the history of stonework or whatever it was. They can now use a bonus action to get tremor sense. So they can, if they're touching stone, they can like close their eyes and can tell where other creatures are moving within a certain distance.
That's cool.
Yeah. Like, that's it. You can just tell where other things are. You can within a certain range. And I think that that's just that has way more use.
So you want to make like the ultimate scout, you could do like a dwarven rogue.
Yeah. Are there guys moving behind this door? That sort of thing. Or like they know that that's happening, so they're all hanging from the ceiling and can't, just weird stuff like that. You can have fun with that.
Yes.
And it's useful. It's not like, Bronzebeard the Third carved this himself using twigs that he captured from the forest nearby. No, it's an actual thing that somebody can use in a game and have a time with it. Next, they've got elves.
Shock.
Yeah, elves are pretty much the same. They got rid of the sub races, and now they have the exact same sub races, but they're calling them lineages. That's it. They did change wood elves. Wood elves used to have a thing that let them hide, even in like low density areas, low cover. They got rid of it, and instead all three of the sub races, lineages, now have spells at level 1, level 3, and level 5.
Okay.
And they're better. It's just better. I know people were complaining they didn't have it is better.
Okay. I'll take your word for it.
Level
Up Your Gaming Podcast at gmail.com if you don't agree.
Yes. Not me. Don't at me. Gnomes are the next. They look like they're been changed, but don't be fooled. They're the exact same. They took specific unique traits that each of the gnomes had and just mapped them to spells. There was the Tinkerer gnome had a thing where they could tinker and make stuff. They're like, okay, instead you get the prestidigitation spell, and you can use the prestidigitation spell to make an object that does the thing that you would do out of prestidigitation, which is the exact same thing as making the object that could do the thing before, but they just mapped it a different way. I think it's cool because it gives you more options, and it's not like, here's the only thing you can do with it. No, like, if you can come up with a way that this works from the spell, now you've got a little box you can press that'll do the thing.
Cool.
Yeah. But it's
so they have spells to complement all those other powers now.
Which those spells existed before. They just had mapped them to different names because, flavor.
Exactly.
Okay. This is the thing with writing a game and making soup. Don't add flavor just for flavor. It should have a purpose.
That's true, yes. We're not just going to add whatever we want in there.
So,
ice cream has a lot of flavor. We don't put that in soup.
No. What was next? Halflings. They I didn't care for halflings. Halflings in this just seemed super bland. There's no sub races at all. They had something. One of the sub races used to have naturally stealthy, where you could hide behind somebody of a larger size, which was super fun. You just like disappear behind your teammate; they can't find you. Just cause. No, now you're just proficient in stealth.
Okay.
It loses, anything unique about it, and that's all you get. It seems like a downgrade.
Okay.
They've got orcs. In 5e, they had like half elves and half orcs, and they got rid of all the half stuff. And part of the thing was that if you want to be half anything, half this or half that, whatever, be half that, but take the abilities from one of the two halves, and you're just,
either be a human, half orc, half human, or be a orc, half human. Yeah. But you pick the delineate where you got your powers from.
Yeah. Or are you more like your mom or your dad?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's fine. Would I like to have seen a system that lets you, mix and match between them? Sure. Is that way too complicated and requires way too much, point building and.
Well, listen, if this becomes the thing, you can try to work that out with your GM in a session 0 and see if you want to get really creative.
Sure. And you absolutely should. But now they've got orcs. They get the same dark vision and relentless endurance as before, but they swapped out menacing and savage tax. Menacing gave you intimidation. Savage tax gave you an extra dice of damage on a crit.
Yeah, I remember that.
Right? They swapped those out for adrenaline rush and powerful build. Powerful build just means that you act as if you're a larger size when doing stuff. So you can like push people around, carry more stuff, whatever. And then adrenaline rush is you can get a bonus dash a couple times a day that comes with temporary hit points. So like you're in the fight, you can bonus dash and get hit points to get to the fight. It's great, but an extra dice on crits is also really nice. So, yeah.
Again, it gave you a lot of reason to pair Barbarian with the...
Yes, it did. It absolutely did. So, that's the thing. You could start putting out a lot of damage on a Barbarian Orc. You still can. It's not that you can't. It's just
you're trying to tone it down. You're trying to give you more reason to maybe choose a different race to go with that class. And I understand why you do that.
Yeah. And then the last one was Tieflings. In the original core book for 5e, Tieflings were just one thing. No sub races. You get this. In subsequent books, they added, or even online, some people custom built stuff, all these various variants. Yeah, I think that works. Various variants of the Tieflings. You get the different, they're from this area or they're from that area of hell, and they've got these special abilities. They did that. They gave them 3 different sub lineages. And each one of them, instead of them all being immune to fire, they've got like poison, necrotic, and fire now. And each one of them, they all still get the same thaumaturgy cantrip, which I'm very happy about. Comes in super useful, all sorts of games. But they also get a ranged attack cantrip based on their damage resistance. So I think that's nice too. That's just like, between the different races that are in here, the Ardlings and the Tieflings seem super useful, like actually fairly functional characters. Elves got a minor change. That's good. Dwarves have that tremor sense, which sounds fun. and some of them aren't nearly as nice.
Yeah, it sounds like they added a lot of different things. It took away some other things. It's definitely going to shift the meta. That's the whole point of it. You don't want to just do the same thing that you had before.
No, and by getting stat points out of your race and just making it about, functionality, it lets players choose what sort of characters they want to incorporate into a game. If everybody's playing, tiefling warlocks and orc barbarians because those are the meta, well, like, why is your tiefling warlock heading out into the countryside to go adventuring if that seems to be a fairly popular profession?
You're the 12th tiefling warlock that we've seen this month.
Right?
Why are there so many of you?
I may incorporate that into a game. It's just one of those things. And like, you get to play a smart orc, Thog, the Warhammer. Didn't want to be Thog the Warhammer. That's just what his dad called him. He went and he studied to be a wizard. He wants to be a wizard. His dad got really mad at him because he's reading books all the time. That's why I had to leave home.
There you go. Not all orcs are dummies.
There you go. A big old himbo tiefling, just wandering around, working on his biceps.
That'd be great.
Excuse me. Okay. The next section is the part that really is nice here. They changed all those stats and stuff and they put it into backgrounds.
Okay.
In the past, you get like a handful of backgrounds you could pick. You could be a sailor. You could be a soldier. Everybody picks the same ones because you get just a handful of them. And there's notes in the original that says, hey, you can come up with your own backgrounds, work it out with your DM. Right?
Yeah, nobody does that.
Nobody does that. In this one, they're like, you have to make your own background. Here is the exact things that you get to pick.
Okay.
Okay. You get either you have to pick your ability scores. You get to have 2 in one ability and 1 in another ability, or 1 in 3 different abilities. Your choice. Doesn't matter. Just you get to pick.
Okay.
Right? You get to pick 2 skills. Straight off the bat, just 2 skills. Whatever 2 skills work with whatever background you've decided on.
Okay.
You get a tool proficiency.
Anyone that you wish.
Anyone that you wish.
Okay.
Now, like, when we played D&D, when my characters, the people that played with me, usually would pick like soldiers or guards or blah, blah, blah. And they always ended up with the same tool proficiency. It was always a gaming set. They'd always get like dice or chess pieces or like card. Nobody ever played that. Nobody ever got involved in that.
Mm-hmm.
When other games where people actually used it, when the tools came in useful, it was like when they had cooking utensils, when they had tinkerer's tools, when they had stone cutting tools.
But in order to get that, you have to have the right background.
Yeah.
And so now you can just kind of nix all that and be like, well, I like the skills that the gladiator has, and I'm going to do this.
Exactly. Because, a gladiator who spends his weekends making pottery is a more interesting gladiator.
Exactly.
Yeah. One of the things I didn't care for in the backgrounds is that everybody gets an additional language. I think that D&D has too many languages already.
Well, because everybody starts with common, and then you get your racial language, and then there's another language. The only thing that is useful for is if you are trying to do puzzles, but then everybody tends to choose the same languages for puzzles.
Uh-huh.
It's never like this puzzle was written in orc. No, it's always like draconic or demon or or like something sounds more exotic.
Yeah, abyssal or yeah. In one of the games that I'm playing right now, as a joke, we all picked the same language. We all picked Draconic just because two of the characters were Dragonborn, and we just wanted to. We didn't tell them that we all spoke Draconic, and they were like talking shit about us, so we could hear them and just start talking shit about them. And that was the only reason. It has no use in the game. We haven't come across a single language puzzle because it's not written into some of these modules.
You tend to not run into language puzzles. GMs tend not to use the language in terms of encounters and where you are and who you're talking to. You tend to have a lot of missed opportunity, I would say, with the language, which is probably one of those things which you've kept around for so long because it's a big world, it's a vast world, but at the same time, nobody tends to use the language.
Yeah. So anyway, and the way that they've got the languages set up is that, here's your common languages. You've got your 8 common languages. Everybody speaks common. And then you've got, like Gnomish and Orcish and Dragon, those common languages. And then you've got your uncommon languages. You're like Sylvan and your Abyssal. But you can pick whatever you want. You don't have to like do something special to learn a fancy language that nobody's spoken in a billion years.
Which is nice. I mean, it's sort of like, like some high schools offer like Latin. Okay. And
Yeah.
like, why do you need to know Latin? You don't.
No. Well, I mean, I'm not going to argue that Latin isn't useful.
Okay. Well, I mean, so practical everyday.
But nobody speaks Sanskrit.
That's true. Okay. So, but again, this is the same argument here, which is you've got these weird languages, but it makes sense that, if you are proficient enough to have learned a language as an adventurer, you could have picked up any one of the ones that you wanted to pick up.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a difficult argument to say, get rid of it, but also what use is it giving unless it's being used? So, yeah, whatever. It's not my thing. Language in this setting, I get why they put it there, but I don't think it's adding a lot of benefit. There's 2 last things in backgrounds. Everybody gets a first level feat. So, nice. And they say it's a first level feat. That is something unique. We saw that was it in 4? I know in 3.5 they had like skill trees basically, where you had to be a certain level or had to meet certain prerequisites to get certain skills. That mostly went away with 5e, but here they're saying, a first level feat. So perhaps as you level up, you get additional feats or options for, more complicated feats. I think that'll be interesting to see what they do. But because everybody gets one, that gives you more options to do things, a broader sense of skills. I think that's cool. And then the last thing was that they give you 50 gold to spend on starting equipment. And this is where I was going to bring in the whole GM, DM planning, is that if this is, and I think this is a good idea, because some players, they want to have, X, Y, and Z. They want to come in and they want to have a specially flavored character and they want to do it a certain way. And having them force them to choose, these are your only options for gear that you're allowed to leave with, sort of restricts their ability to make choices and make a character, make a story. But if they're just giving characters 50 gold to do it, I think that GMs should have a couple of pre-packaged bundles that they're like, you can have all of this for 30 gold.
That's not a bad idea. You can pick a starting armor and this and that. Like, I mean, because that's what people are going to need to go forth. I don't, again, this is me not having played 5e a ton. I don't remember how little or how much 50 gold is. And I don't think that it buys you a lot, because I'm pretty sure like a broadsword or something costs like
It's
10,
like
20
20,
gold.
20 or 30 gold. Yeah.
Yeah. So
some of
you
those
you
things are
blow, you blow your
ridiculous.
entire budget on like a mediocre weapon.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's, setting up, because you can build these little packages of like, daggers and short bows and whatnot. And like, you would have it as like a pre-packaged thing. And if the character wants to come and doesn't know what they're doing, I would even go so far as to make that part of your session 0.
My flavor text for that, or what I would do if I was in your case, I've talked about money on this podcast before and awarding gold and stuff. And in our games, we've sort of just done away with the gold. I actually have a topic in the hopper about rewards. And maybe we'll talk about that one in a future episode soon, or I'll talk about it as it relates to this subject here. But gold itself, you eventually accumulate so much of it that it becomes worthless, and you can do that really quick in D&D. And the starting piece is, if you're building an adventurer, a brand new starting adventurer, let the player kind of give you a set of equipment that they want to have and just say, that sounds good, and you have 10 gold. Okay, like just do that. That's much, much easier than being like, okay, I need to see the accounting on this. Okay, you wanted 2 loaves of bread? Well, sorry, you don't have enough for that. You ran out of your coppers a while back. So
Well, and there is something about being giving them too much. You don't want to have characters walking in with the best art, 1,500 gold armor and 1,000 gold sword.
I wouldn't do that, but I mean,
No.
just here's a light armor or here's a medium armor. Like, take the base one of this, something that gives you a start, because when you start fighting those rats and snakes and spiders at the beginning, they'll kick your ass. Okay.
Yeah. And if you are planning on going out and doing an adventure, if you're planning on becoming an adventurer, you don't wander into the field with a stick that you found on the ground and a sackcloth that you're just draping over yourself and duct taping for a belt. You're going to die. So yeah, give the players the option to like do something that's useful. 50 gold as starting equipment is great as a conceptual starting point, but it should never be a hard and fast rule.
I agree with that. What I would say is have the player present the items to you, show them what they cost, and then tell the players, yes, no, this is too much, this is too... you can up this, you could do this. You really have to... It's more of a feeling thing with that as a starting piece. And
if your players don't know what they want, or don't know, like, what should I get? Have some prepackaged stuff, like, here's your starter pack. Do you want starter pack A or starter pack B? And give them the option. And then they can be, thank you for showing me what I can do. If it's a new character, somebody that hasn't played this type of character before, or somebody that hasn't played the game before, provide them with the options so they can come up with choices.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Yeah. But all in all, I really like the idea of, giving the power to the players to come up with their own background. Like, if you want to be this or that or whatnot, you can pick the skills and abilities that match that, and you can tack it on to any race. It doesn't have to be this or that, and you can have some real fun creating a unique character.
No, that's good. I like the customization that you have there. More options to do different things in the background section. Sounds good.
Yeah. That takes us right on into the next section. Feats. So we talked about this just 10 seconds ago. They've got in this document, they've got sort of what I believe to be a very simplified list of available feats at level 1. They only have like a page and a half, 2 pages at most. And I think they're just sort of like, these are what we were thinking about. And even there's a couple of things that really stand out. So everybody gets a feat as part of their background, right?
Mm-hmm.
And humans get an extra feat just because humans are awesome. One of the things that stood out to me, in 5e, there was one called Healer, and you'd always get that person who hasn't played this game before and would go and pick it up because they're playing the cleric or they're playing, druid healer, and they wanted to be a healer. And the healer feat had nothing to do with that. It lets you use healing kits to stabilize somebody during battle as an action. It didn't give you any bonuses to your heals. It didn't make you a better healer. It meant that anybody could use a healing kit and do a thing with it. Well, they took that's still part of this, but then they added in that if you roll a 1 on any of your heals, either spell or using the healing kit, you can re-roll that. You can just re-roll 1s on any of your heals.
Okay.
Now, you can, if you just roll crap rolls on your heals, you do your healing word or whatnot, and you roll a bunch of 1s, re-roll them.
There you go.
Yeah. I've seen that happen in middle of battle. As the cleric throws out a healing word to bring somebody back from the brink because they're down, gives them just enough to bring them up. They roll, and it's just like straight 1s. They stand up with like 4 health.
I mean, healing is pathetic in D&D as it is. Yeah. So, don't feel bad if you roll 4-1. Basically, the most efficient healing you can do in D&D is let your players go to incapacitated and then heal them back to life, basically, and just let them stay there.
Yeah. It's a waste of time to try and keep up
people
with
high up. This isn't an MMO. You're not trying to keep somebody healed up.
No. But I think that, actually adding healing ability to a healing feat,
that would make sense. Yeah,
that would make sense. The other one that stood out to me was Savage Attacker. They have a thing where if you hit with a weapon on an attack, you can roll the damage a couple of times and then pick the one that you like most. I think you get to like roll the damage twice and pick whichever one you like better.
Oh, that's an interesting one.
Yeah. Except my complaint with this was that it was specifically working with weapons. Like they're talking about savage attacks. They're talking about, actual melee damage.
I'm getting ahead of myself on the document, but I'm wondering if that's their answer to the way that they change crits.
Yeah, well, that's a thing. So I was thinking that this shouldn't be. I was actually thinking about this in terms of unarmed attacks, right? So if you wanted to be a brawler, because they did add some things to grappling, they added some better unarmed attack features. But if you wanted to be a brawler, you can't be a savage brawler. You can't be like savage. You have to have weapons, otherwise it doesn't count. So I was thinking, make that any attack that uses your strength modifier.
Yeah, I mean that works too.
And then you could even do the flip of that, like a finesse attacker that uses the dex modifier and, I don't know, increases the crit range or something. So you're more likely to crit if you use a dex attacks, and you can pick bigger damage every hit if you're a savage attack.
Okay.
Just thoughts. I mean, these are playtests,
Yeah.
Who knows? And there's only a handful of feats on here, so who knows what the other ones are going to be, or even if these things stand out. But we want to get, of course, into the actual things that matter to us as DMs, the rules. And the rules are down at the bottom there, at the very end of this thing. We had talked about this before, and this was the thing that really drew me to this topic, was the D20 test.
Yeah. So I referenced Ginny D because she did a little short on this. And I read it, and I know the complaint that the Josh said is all over the internet, which is right now, if you roll a 1 under their new rules, you always fail. Okay, which actually I think is the rule in 5e base if you're playing it legit. Okay, and a 20 always succeeds. Okay, so your natural roll, so you have a 5% chance of failing, and you've got a 5% chance of always succeeding, and then a bunch of crap in between. And the argument is that if I don't characterize this correctly, let me know, Josh. The argument is that at level 15, you have huge bonuses to actions or your skills, and if you have to roll a die and always have a 5% chance of failing, it doesn't make sense. That's what it comes down to. So Josh pointed this out and said that there's subtext written in here. And after talking with Jared about a lot of other systems that he's been reading about, the way that role-playing seems to be evolving right now, for better or worse, however you want to look at it, is they are trying to get away from rolling as many dice to do things. Okay? And we've talked about the Just Say Yes episode. We've also talked about, like, what is the purpose of rolling dice? And, like, when should you just give your players the win? This is really one of those rules that is put in there to kind of highlight that subject. So if you are somebody who's looking at this and going, this is terrible, I can't believe it. Well, this is also an indication that maybe you shouldn't have a level 15 character roll something superfluous that they could fail. Okay, that isn't necessary to the character. Again, you would only want to have somebody roll something, and this is true in any game. You only really care about the results of a roll that have stakes attached to them. Okay? If my character is gambling, then roll the dice to see if I win or lose. If my character is in combat, I roll the dice to see if I win or lose. If my character is trying to barter at a shop, I roll the dice to see if I win or lose. Okay? Maybe you let the characters influence some of that, what have you, what may it be. No matter how you want to run that, no matter how you want to think about that, you only do it when they have stakes attached to it. So if you care about, I talk about this in the context of searching a lot. Like if you're searching a room, if it's imperative that your players find the thing in the room, don't have them roll for it. Okay? Because it makes you look, it's supposed to be there for tension, but what ends up happening is that everybody fails the roll, and then you have to come up with some reason why they can roll it again. Okay? And it looks silly is what ends up happening. I've seen it happen. I saw it happen in a live, I listened to it in a live play. Okay? Somebody, they had the guy roll 4 times before he finally succeeded. It was something that needed no roll. Okay? Yeah. And it's just like, don't have them roll to do things that you don't care about the result of and that have no impact on the story and have no impact on the character winning or losing. So like if you're out in survival and you go to hunt something, if you have the skill, if you have it, just let the player do it. Okay? Unless like you're doing like a starvation thing and you're in rolling and getting food is so important that the character's survival depends upon it, and they lose dice and whatever it may be. Maybe you have some crazy mechanic built around it. Otherwise, just let them do it. And I know that doesn't sound as exciting to you as a GM because you're familiar with the idea of like, okay, well, I'm going to have them roll and that tension's going to be there. But you're not build the tension in other ways around those situations where you're giving the player the win. So I don't know. That's my thought on it.
No, absolutely. And that's why I saw this. And I'm actually also thinking about this from the other side. So with part of this, they say that if you roll the d20 and you get that 20, it's an auto success. And I saw people just complaining that that's not how this is supposed to work. And I'm thinking, I'm sorry, if rolling the highest score possible would not get you a success on a roll, why are you rolling in the first place?
Yes.
Why is your DM letting you roll if there is no chance for you to succeed at a thing? If you are a level 1 bard and you are trying to seduce a dragon, it should eat you. You don't get that chance. It will just eat you. Yes, okay. You rolled the 20. Good job. It laughs at you and sends you on your merry way. You did not successfully seduce the dragon. Maybe it's a 20 not to die. But that should be, you shouldn't, if you don't believe that the character would lose with a 1, and you don't think the character would succeed with a 20, either of those cases shouldn't be rolls. They should be built into the story, into the narrative. I'd like to do this thing. You try and this is what happens, you know, and play it off a different way. You don't tell a player no. You just move into the next thing. It's like I was talking about with the improv, is you take what they ask and you spin it on its head. You know, you do verbal judo with it and redirect the action.
Yeah, so. No, I agree with that. I mean, the counter to that is that the 20 always succeeds. So if you're not okay with the 1 always failing, or if you are okay with the 1 always failing, then you must be okay with the 20 always succeeding. And it really makes no sense to not have the 20 always succeed. I know that might muck up some things in combat. You're like, but your plus modifier on your attack is lower than my DC at this point. Like, I don't care. Okay? Because the chances that the player is going to do it again in the next action is 5%. Okay? It's really low that they do it. It's a gamble at that point.
It's not. And that's the thing. That's the other part of this that's in there. It's not 5%. Because we get back to the other thing they changed to part of these rules is inspiration. So inspiration in this gets you a advantage on a roll. And you get inspiration when you roll a 20. So if you critically succeed on something and are asked to do it again, you can take that advantage, and now you've got a greater chance of succeeding again.
You do have a greater chance of succeeding again. Again, your expected value is closer to like a 14, I think is what it comes out to on that. But yes, I there's a really cool guy who did the math breakdown on how this works out that I enjoyed. But you're less likely to fail with the 5. The 5 happens, like the failure happens very, very rarely if you have the advantage. So you are more likely to probably end up with another 20, but it's still very low odds. You're more likely to land somewhere between those values.
I know you say that. I know the math works out that way, but I have players that roll 20s constantly. I can't give them advantage. They will destroy me.
No, you have to let them do that. Listen, you just roll with it, work with it. Don't fear that rule. Go with it. Like, enjoy it, work with it. And if they go on a hot streak and they roll a bunch of 20s, then go with it. Let them keep doing what they're going to do. Okay. Maybe they're kicking ass. Okay. The inspiration hits them at the moment and they're just suddenly they've been, you know, they're seeing through their mind's eye and they're just kicking ass this combat or what have you be.
You should never steal the player's glory because they're there to have fun and you're there to facilitate that. And if you start breaking their fun because it's making you feel bad, what are you doing?
Don't take your game as a personal fight against the players. It's not there to be a personal fight against the players. You need to derive something else as a GM for how you enjoy the game. The game's measure should not be, I am happy when my players suffer. Okay. And it should be more of, I am happy when my players succeed, and they succeed within the bounds that they have and the rules that they have. Okay. So meaning if my players get really lucky, you got to understand the level of joy on that side of the table that you're going to see is going to be crazy, because people are going to be rolling 20 and they're going to be like, oh my God, I got another one, like another inspiration, and they're going to keep gambling their way through it. They're not going to roll 20s the entire time. I understand that, you might have somebody who's on a really lucky streak, but
well, and even if they do, that was another thing they put in there, was that if you can only have one inspiration at a time, but if you get another one, you only have one, you can hand it off to your friends. So you want to talk about a side of the table that is having a great time, is when that one player is just rolling 20s after 20s, and they are just handing out advantage to all of the people in their party, and they are just hitting it, because that is going to be one of those days that everybody talks about. Man, this session, it was going this way, and then suddenly we hit a hot streak, and everybody started getting 20s, and we're rolling like kings. And what was that?
What?
It was
did I trigger one of the sounds?
Yes.
I was playing with one of the buttons on my soundboard. Josh,
rolling like kings.
Boy, I hope that goes through on the recording. I didn't have it marked as a listening thing on here, so maybe it didn't come through. We just went through the audio board, but interesting. No, I agree that what you're going to do, what is more heroic. Actually, this actually does speak to the side of the D&D adventuring story, is that the characters that you are playing are heroic in nature, and the aspect of being able to get inspiration, roll into more 20s, and continue to like kind of explode into more inspiration is like really good. It also gives benefit to a spellcaster who rolls a 20 on something. So now that 20, not only does it maybe you lose a little bit something from the critical side of things, but that 20 now gives you inspiration to keep doing better. And so you can kind of see these moments right now where you can see a heroic side of how a battle or how a scene could play out if players get on a really good lucky streak and they roll a bunch of 20s. And so I think that you should embrace that as a GM, or I would embrace it as a GM, because I think that that's really cool. And your players, like Josh said, are going to get real giddy about it, because they're going to be like, oh my God, I can't believe it. This was a moment of sheer luck. Like we had these exploding 20s. They're just going all over the place. And we fought against incredible odds and we won. And, I think that makes for a better story than I'm mad that my players are rolling too many successes right now. Like, don't be a curmudgeon.
This is your time to shine as a DM. We talked about this in last week when we talked about, how to spice up your combat. They're doing these crazy rolls. You should be narrating. You should give them the opportunity to like, okay, you just crit. How does this look? And then, roll with it. They start throwing 20s out and everybody's having a great time. The battle should go from like, we're standing around slashing at orcs to, the lights dim and spotlights hit us and there's rock music in the background. It should be awesome.
Cue your epic music, and now the fight has gone from a 0 to a 20. I mean, like, this thing, you've turned it up. Like, I think
20s.
Yes. Embrace this rule. I think it's a good rule, and embrace the other part of it, which is the subtext. You don't need to have people roll for everything. Okay, and it's important to not have people roll for everything. Okay, and if this gets you away from making characters roll for a bunch of stuff that isn't beneficial or not, or if you don't like the rule, I'm sure that you could still take passive rolls on stuff as well, which are 10s. Okay? So you take a 10 plus your stat, and then you almost always succeed still. So why do you make them roll? I mean, like, come on.
Yeah, no, and I think the subtext is there, and I think it's very clear that they don't want there to be, as much gambling when the stakes aren't necessarily important, or when the characters are powerful enough or too weak to make a difference. So, yeah,
I agree.
All right. There's some other things in this document, but nothing else really stands out as stupid useful. They got a new thing about grappling. It's interesting. We'll see if it's any good. And then the only other thing that I thought was nice was they combined the spell lists. So you don't have different spell lists for every single character class. You just have different types of spells. And the only benefit that has for us on the DM side is I don't have to navigate to find out who's got what spells at what level. But yeah, no, I think it's looking really good. I can't wait to see what they come out with next. Not D&D next. That was 5e. One D&D.
Well, it'd be interesting to see if this becomes D&D 6 or what does it become. So 5.5, who knows? But do you have anything else you want to add to this, Josh?
No. Like I said, can't wait to see what comes next. And yeah.
All right. Well, this has been a long one, but a lot of good information in there on the new coming D&D. Decide whether or not I want to split this one into 2 episodes, or if I want to leave it as one. But we'll. I don't think there's a good middle breaking point, so we'll probably just leave it as one. But I hope you enjoyed the breakdown of the character creation. Josh did an excellent job taking different notes for it, and again, I hope you enjoyed talking about the big rule change that I guess the controversial rule change. If you have any thoughts on the new D&D, let us know. Level Up Your Gaming Podcast at gmail.com or facebook.com/levelupyourgaming. We're also on YouTube, so you can comment on the videos there. Also smash the like button, subscribe, notify, all that stuff there. And then if you listen to it on the podcast, subscribe, review, recommend to a friend, all that other stuff that you can do for that, just to make sure that the podcast gets out there and touches more people. And but that's going to wrap us up for the week. So for Josh, I'm Aaron. Have a great week, everyone.
Bye.
Gaming podcast. Level it up.